Good afternoon and welcome to the RPA Academy, the latest webinar in a long series of updates and insights into what's going on in the world of RPA. Today, we're going to talk about the skills gap and why should HR be leading the RPA revolution. Ed, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is something that it's kind of been fascinating me over the last couple of years, because this was kind of why I got into the RPA sort of education and training space. But what's happened along the way is I just learned so much that's kind of fascinating. And in the meantime, the economy's been churning along as well. So for me, there's kind of some sort of macroeconomic issues which are kind of just not going to go away in the foreseeable future. And then some sort of much more local issues that we can start to address. But this is huge. I mean, I'm surprised that organizations aren't more scared about this and more aware of this, but I'll go through the details in this. And I think, where I will start with is, kind of some core numbers, and I need to actually update this slide slightly because the 49 is now changed to 50. But the 3.9% is the US unemployment level. The reason why 49 is relevant because a few months ago it was the lowest unemployment had been for like 49 years, and now it's the lowest it's been for 50 years. So, whether you're in the US, whether in Canada, the UK, Australia, the major economies that are adopting RPA, they are really, really just running out of people. There's a sort of, a huge issue in every industry and main geographies where they just, there aren't the number of people they need to actually to keep their businesses going if there's a sustainable growth in the economy. I'll come on to that more later. I mean, the 800 million number, that is McKinsey's estimate of the number of people who are going to be impacted by just automation technologies over the next 5 or 10 years. So we're not including blockchain, we're not including AI, we're not including learning, but just purely from automation. 800 million jobs are going to be impacted globally just from that. And then the figure at the bottom is, again, I probably need to update slightly, but in terms of, if you look at the market valuation of UiPath and Automation Anywhere and Blue Prism, we're talking about $9 billion worth of valuation in those organizations currently. And it goes up and down depending on a number of factors, but given the fundraising these organizations have done in the last sort of 7 or 8 months, we're starting to see tangible levels put on 3 organizations of many that are actually changing the world. So there's insane value being created just in the in terms of shareholder value, but also the the impact of their platforms is just way beyond that. And I think what we're seeing in the last couple of months is that everyone's just upwardly revising their estimation of how big the RPA market is on its own, and that's only going to have a snowball effect on the follow-on machine learning and AI markets. So that's kind of like where I will start with the numbers, because these alone kind of start to get me, make my sort of ears and mind prick up. And then you could dig a bit deeper. The 3.9% I talked about already, but the next number starts to get symptomatic. I was talking to a big recruiter in the US a couple of months ago or 2 months ago, and he was saying that normally his company could place 95% of all jobs that came through from their clients. So the client would pick up the phone and say, can you get me a job with someone 5 years .NET experience, based in Chicago, and 95% of the time they'd be able to fill that job. Now that's dropped to 81%. So again, they work very much in the technology field, across the US. And I think what I talk about the US just because, the numbers are available more handily. But I know this is applying in Australia, Canada, the UK, and this is just what's going to happen in Germany, France, Singapore, Hong Kong. These are kind of exactly what we're going to see there in those countries. But really, he's going from being able to satisfy, solve 95% of his customer requests down to 81%. And following on from that, he was saying, that if you're kind of a 3-4 year technology graduate in somewhere small, US city like in Nashville in Tennessee, you can be expecting to get $120,000 a year as your salary. So just because of the tightness in the labor market, it's just because of the growth of the economies, the salaries are starting to rise. I mean, it's not really showing up in the macroeconomic data. The Federal Reserve today was just saying, they don't see inflation happening, but it's kind of when you look at these niches that we all work in, there's absolutely wage growth going on and wage inflation going on. And the last figure there, the $500,000. The first part of that is how much Google pays its machine learning senior graduates per year. But also the flip side is there's only 500 machine learning graduates who've got PhDs in the whole world. So there's kind of, again, these are kind of numbers that not necessarily plucked out of the air, but just trying to show that we're not, there's pent up demand for people is following through to salaries very, very quickly, but it's also based on kind of an overall shortage. So those are kind of the starting point. And my next joke is that this slide was previously people queuing up for work, but now it's the other way around. It's employers queuing up to recruit an employee.
And I think we've seen the same in the UK as well. The number of recruiters that we've spoken to that effectively have said the same thing, that they face two types of problem. The first problem actually is the employers themselves not being very clear in understanding what are their actual needs. So RPA is an example. They'll often try and recruit somebody who can effectively do almost every job on the profile, which is define the leadership, put the processes in place, put the governance in place, and and in their spare time, of course, do the development and turn the lights out at the end of the day. So they're pushing too much into these role descriptions. And conversely, I think and maybe this is a Europe and a Brexit thing. I think there's less movement going on, and so I think that there's less skills available in the market, making it also doubly difficult to get people into the right roles.
Well, again, there's two things. I mean, the less movement thing is very interesting because I think as a corollary of being not having much of a skills pool out in the marketplace for employers to just draw on. They're also having to say, well, how do I keep my existing resources? How do I kind of keep them engaged? How do I keep them kind of rewarded? And that doesn't necessarily mean purely financially, but in terms of how do I kind of keep them engaged in our environment, how it's staying with us. And I think what you start to see this kind of concept, maybe we're back at the jobs for life model, whereby organizations, realize they've got people who've got 80, 90% of what they're going to need currently. They can actually reskill them in the last 10%. And as the needs evolve, it's actually a lot cheaper just training people who know your organization, who know you, and you know them, giving them an extra, $1,000-$2,000 a year of extra training per year to keep them relevant, keep them skilled, keep them fresh as the technologies move on, rather than losing them every 18 months or 2 years, and then the huge cost of replacing them, the opportunity cost of lost productivity, and then reskilling the next person that comes in to replace them. So there's absolutely that. But I think the other part you talked on there was the jobs definitions. What are these jobs called? I mean, we were doing some research the last couple of days around the jobs market, for which countries were biggest in terms of the number of RPA jobs available. And what was stunning was the range of job titles that were popping up. There were similarities. There was kind of developer, senior engineer, junior engineer, but kind of words were. It was very, very broad at a sort of top level. When you dug down into the detail, it was all over the place. There was again, you touched on exactly the right point. The key issue is that you're asking one poor developer to kind of turn up and do everything from being a management consultant or change management leadership role through to kind of actually plugging in the RPA platform and making sure it runs with everything in between. So I think what employers are from what we can see is really struggling with is just what are the buckets, what are the jobs, what are the titles, and what can we expect from people. And that in itself causes noise. Are you recruiting the right person? Are you kind of giving them the right kind of framework to succeed? Are you supporting them? So again, all this touches. You start to even in this conversation, start to talk about real HR specific issues. How do you reward them? How do you recruit them? How do you kind of define their roles? And I think this is why it's part of the bigger theme that keeps going through my kind of head is the HR's got an opportunity here to really, really shape their organization's future. I think, just as a starting point, one of the actual business risk we're facing, and this article is a great one. I'll gladly share the link. But it was the Wall Street Journal doing a piece around why Japan was looking at immigration as an opportunity. And again, I don't want to get involved in the immigration debate, but one of the facts that came out of the article was that in Japan, there are actually businesses that are going bust, or they're breaking down. They're actually going out of business because they don't have the people to do the work. And I don't think we're at that stage here yet. But if you're a large organization and you're unable to recruit people to do whether it's strawberry picking in California, or whether it's invoice processing work in Connecticut, or whether it's BPO work, and if you're actually struggling to get your people through the door to do the work because they've got so much other opportunities, then that's a business risk. It's a huge business risk, and I don't see people calling it out. I see organizations saying, look, we're a granular level, saying we really want to keep our people, we really want to invest in their futures because they know our organization and we can upskill them. I don't see people seeing it as a business risk, and I don't see huge organizations collapsing because of this, but a more granular level and more individual level, department to department. If you're struggling to get people in to do the work, then the work just won't get done. And of course, that opens up opportunities around, well, in place of people, you just do automation. So that does play into the technology game again. But you still need people to run the bots, to build them, and to operate them. As we've seen throughout the market, people really aren't getting displaced by bots. It's really the bots that are getting, helping people do better work. By and large, obviously there are exceptions, but again, this was just brought it home to me that here you got a major economy, I think third biggest in the world after America, China, and Japan. Actually having macroeconomic impact because they don't have the people to do the work, and I think that's something we're going to see, more specifically. So,
and I've heard that before. Japan, I think they have one specific problem of their population is actually in decline, so the numbers of people available is going down. But you still see variations on that theme where there are certain roles, the more mundane roles, if you like, that are becoming much more difficult to recruit for because people simply don't want to do those types of jobs, and effectively there are jobs available that are a bit more interesting, so they're going to go for those first because we've still seen these low levels of unemployment, and the same is true in the UK, and so you've got these very, very mundane tasks, and actually very hard to hold on to people. You end up training somebody and they move on very quickly, so it's very difficult to keep them in the role. And I think the answer, of course, is using robotic process automation or other types of technologies.
Yeah, they don't want to do the jobs, and they've actually got a choice. I mean, that's the starting point. And even to do the jobs, will they stay? Again, it just goes back to your employee value proposition. If HR or recruiters are able to go out and say, join this company, you're not going to do crap work, you're going to be doing interesting work. Yeah. Well, that's a differentiator, maybe. Phrased slightly more politely, but in terms of you come to us, we're going to use your brains and your experience and your skills, not going to pay you to just process documentation or do low-end work. Plus also the culture, we're an organization that embraces digital. We actually don't just talk about that at a high level, we actually it trickles all the way through the organization. And again, it just goes back to the messaging that HR needs to be thinking about and leading as part of this journey ahead. But I think we touch on RPA, but this blob of a slide touches on all the other technologies that are out there that are all having an impact. Everything from blockchain through fintech, AI, big data. All these things are really happening in parallel to what's happening in RPA. So yes, we're talking about RPA, and yes, that's our core focus at the moment. But in reality, the skills gap for machine learning PhDs is going to be infinitely smaller than the skills gap for AI experts, because that hasn't even started to take off, in any sort of industrial strength, really. So, everywhere you look, finding someone who's got, 5 years blockchain experience just doesn't exist. Find someone who really understands, big data for finance functions. Those people are few and far between. Anywhere you're going to go, experience is not there. So that can create its own options. We've talked about the employee value proposition. We've talked about salary levels, but you're actually able to say, well, how do you start reskilling your organization for this journey ahead? And hope that and pray that humans are flexible enough to kind of adapt. And then even beyond that, start to think, well, what can we use for modern learning techniques to kind of fight back against the age-old view that the older you get, the less you can learn. Whereas all the science nowadays is the same. With the right techniques, the right skill, you can keep learning as late as you want in life. So there's so many different things happening. It's kind of again, I go back to why it's an exciting place for HR to be leading, rather than just kind of worrying about how do you automate the onboarding process, or how do you kind of apply blockchain to validating people's career backgrounds, and moving away from the tactical application of some of these technologies and into kind of the bigger strategy that's going to make an impact on the organization.
But I guess it's interesting, because I think one of the things that we've sort of seen over the last 5+ years has been operations and finance have been functions have been very keen to sort of jump on the RPA bandwagon, and they've advanced very quickly, whereas HR and some of the other sort of service functions have actually been much slower. There was a survey, and unfortunately this is just picking on the poor Aussies, but 1 in 6 leaders in or people in leadership positions in HR didn't use technology to progress their outcomes, which is that's 1 in 6. That's like 16% of people, leaders, not using technology to the full effect. So there's a big challenge internally that they've got to overcome, but they are also the most important in terms of talent acquisition and skills and culture within the organization. So they've actually got an even bigger role now in digital transformation than they've ever had, and the scales don't balance, or they balance very poorly.
Yeah, and I've always been a fan of you got to understand the technology and see what it can do. So HR should absolutely be applying all these technologies to their own functions. I just think the power of something, applying blockchain certification to your learning path, and knowing that you've actually given someone a verifiable qualification because they've been through your organization, then using that to kind of speed up the onboarding or the recruitment process, because that person's got valid proof that they went to Harvard, there's valid proof they sat that exam. So there's definitely that. And when you go to conferences about HR automation and robotic automation, everyone's very happy to jump into kind of how do we automate the payroll process. And then there's huge things to be done there. So I'm not belittling that, but I just think that's how they learn the real opportunity that's going to impact organizations, transactionally, but how do you kind of think bigger than that? How do you kind of think through the kind of real implications? I kind of, for me, the skills gap is these two kind of points. It's just number of people versus the number of jobs, and then the skills of those people. It's as simple as that. But multiply it back out across, all these various technologies. That gets pretty big very quickly. And if it's not happening now, it's certainly going to be more and more of an issue over the next couple of years. And ongoing. But when you go back to the
and I guess if you go back to your previous slide, the number of skills and the number of jobs, the number of people, actually there's only a certain number of ways you can balance that equation, and the first way you can balance that is through standard recruitment, but that's getting harder and harder to do, and the jobs just aren't there. You can get it by having partnerships with organizations, but again, that's both a costly and difficult thing to do, and there's limited partnerships that you can start to sort of create. So you are getting to a situation where the hard truth comes down to you've got to address the skills gap yourself and find the models and the business processes that attract the right people, but also build the right skills internally on an ongoing basis. And I think that for me involves a number of different things. That's that's not just the actual sort of the skill itself, but also the level of support. There was a conference I did just recently. They were done an RPA implementation, and they were talking about the level of support that they'd got from the different organisations, and almost all of them, sort of relied quite heavily on Google search to resolve some of their issues, and that's really, really poor experience. And it's like, how do you start to address that? Not just the skill, but the maintaining and supporting that skill when it's changing so rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a lot of this is about, well, yeah, the world's happening, these things are happening at a macro level, but really, you can be doing things at a local level that are, are going to address these issues. But it's more like awareness that there are issues in the first place.
Yeah.
And recognizing, that you've got options to address them. So I think, really the purpose of what I always say is that, you're not helpless here, that you've got technology solutions you can be applying, you've got sort of positioning that you can be doing with your internal workforce to be saying, look, we want to keep you, we want to evolve you, we need you as part of the organization. But it's more thinking about, well, it's more recognizing the problem and then working through how to address them. And I think that's kind of the concern. I mean, just put into simple buckets, how do you sort of focus on retaining the people you've currently got? How do you keep their succession planning going, throughout their kind of throughout their careers, so they feel they're moving forward, and also they feel as an organization you've got roles covered. I think when you've got a customer service agent whose job's been automated, but previously they would have become the team leader, suddenly your pool of potential team leaders has been diminished because all your entry jobs have been automated. The same applies up the chain. The team leader becomes the manager, but if there's less team leaders, then who becomes the manager, or is your pool that much shorter? And also, who understands the real underlying processes that they've all been automated a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago? And that's going to become a bigger issue as we go further into the future time. And it happened with outsourcing. People outsource roles, and then someone somewhere else was doing the role, without doing the process, but no one actually back home knew what the process really was. So there's that kind of knowledge retention piece that's embedded in the succession issue. Recruitment, training, reward. These are all things that buckets which, were we to drill in deeper to each of these, there's probably hours and hours of topics to discuss, and all of them. So from my side, I think this is why within the specialisms which we outlined here, across the employee life cycle, every single part of HR should be really engaged in this kind of this space, this journey, this kind of the business risk that they're facing, and that's kind of where I believe that this is time for HR to kind of use the technology for their own operations, but fundamentally step up and lead.
We haven't had any questions come through, but I guess one of the things that sort of we haven't quite covered, which is how things are changing, even further. New roles and responsibilities that need to come through into HR. For example, one of the things that we're sort of seeing more and more of is the use of artificial intelligence, for example. And it's fine when we're using artificial intelligence to scan documents and read receipts and read sort of these formal sort of pre-existing documents. But what happens when we start to actually transfer knowledge from people's heads into the machine learning algorithms? What responsibilities do we have as an organization to those people, both immediately and ongoing? And I guess that's something that HR teams need to start to wrestle with, because it's something new that's coming through, and no one's really thinking of the ethics of these situations. Or no one is a bit harsh, but people aren't considering them sufficiently yet.
Oh, there's this huge, once you get to the AI space, and even you think apply it to your workforce, you can suddenly start noticing that someone's, they've for 3 years they've been arriving at 8 a.m. and leaving at 5:45, every single day, and suddenly they start to arrive at 2 minutes to 9 and leaving at 5:02, and at lunchtime they're out of the office for a full hour. All things you can track with not much science. If you can start applying that to kind of predictability of them actually leaving their job, or or reduced, productivity. And I'm sure it's not going to be difficult to do. But then you're something that always, extreme moral questions. But again, maybe there's a positive side. If someone's not performing and they're able to intervene positively and say, look, are we okay? Is everything okay? We're concerned about you, blah, blah, blah. In whatever kind of polite way you do that. There's a way to turn it around. But the bigger issue about AI, what you do with the data, that's another conversation altogether.
And I think I think we've used our 30 minutes. I think that's been an interesting discussion. Is there anything that we haven't said before we close out?
No, just the recurring theme is that this is not a small issue. This is a big issue. Because even if you're applying technology, and everyone's talking about technology, you still need the people to do it, and that's just not going away. So this is big.
Well, thanks, Ed, and thanks everybody for watching. And if you're watching this in a replay, thank you for listening. Please do check out the RPA Academy for any materials on all of the types of training that we've talked about here, but also about sustaining your learning journey, not just the initial training, but how you get that support and ongoing development throughout. So thanks, Ed, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, Rob.